Morning, church family. Thank you, Joseph. Told Joseph I had to get him up there one more time before he goes off to college. Appreciated his service to the church and how he's always been willing to do whatever he has been asked in all of the time that he has been here. Of course, also grateful to Paul for filling in for me last week. Got a panicked phone call on Saturday that I was very ill. And thank you to all who checked on me. And I'll tell you what, your faces have never looked better. It's good to be back with you, good to be back among the living. Even if I don't know you, hey, if you're visiting with us this morning, we're glad that you're here. I hope that you'll give us a chance to get to know you a little bit after worship. If you're new to the area, you're looking for a church home, or you just happen to wander in this morning, let me tell you, you're in the right place. It's a good group of folks who love God and love one another, and we'd love a chance to love you too. Did you know that this guy is going to be in town today? Anybody know who this is? Yeah, who is this? No, that's not very nice.
Al Yankovic.
Yeah, Weird Al Yankovic is his stage name. Weird Al, as he's colloquially known. I enjoy his music. If you don't know who he is, you may not want to look him up. I don't know. It's up to you. You'll get songs stuck in your head for the rest of your life. Or perhaps he'll ruin your favorite song because he does parodies. Julie is agreeing with me. He does parodies of big hit songs, perhaps most famous for Eat It. The song about binging food based off Michael Jackson's hit single, Beat It, right? He does a lot of these parodies, but, recently I was talking to, and it's a remarkable coincidence that he's going to be in town performing today. No, I'm not going. Yes, I would like to. My wife doesn't want me to, or she doesn't want to go, and that's probably, anyway. It's coincidence that I'm talking about him here for a moment today because, I was talking to a preacher friend recently about how he's coming to the concert, and he told me that, did you know that Weird Al attends a Church of Christ in California? Did you know this? We have a preacher friend, a mutual friend, who had gone to their congregation and worshiped where Weird Al, as they know him, Brother Al, where Brother Al attends in California. And you said, there he's not a celebrity. At church, when he's at home, in the pew, he's kind. He's quiet. He doesn't lead singing, probably because they won't let him bring his accordion for the polka that he likes to play. But he does read scripture from time to time, I was told. In fact, they had a little blurb in their bulletin that said, Brother Al is going to be performing at a certain local venue this upcoming Saturday night. The van leaves from the church parking lot at 4 p.m. I love that the congregation was going to go and support him. But there, he's not Weird Al. He's Brother Al. Just another person in the pew, surrounded by his loving church family, not a celebrity, but as a brother in Christ. But this morning we read of a story in the Gospel of Mark in which Jesus' homecoming to his hometown, when he goes home to his home congregation, it isn't quite so heartwarming. How many of you have done some travel this summer? Have you done some travel? Those who are currently traveling can't raise their hands. You know why? Because they're away from home. My daughter has been gone, in fact, the past week, and I don't know who was more excited for her to be home, herself or me. Definitely her little sister is the correct answer there. There's nothing like coming home again, is there, after you've been away? There's nothing like coming home again. There's just a special feeling of home. In fact, it, according to my estimates, makes up the percentage of about 50% of country music songs ever written. The feeling of going home to your small town after you've been out away on the road. There's something about going home, isn't there? And yet when Jesus returns home in this particular text in Mark chapter 6, a lot has happened. But this one doesn't go particularly well. If you have your Bibles, I'd love for you to turn there with me to the passage that Joseph just read for us a moment ago from Mark chapter 6. We'll take a look at Jesus' homecoming to Nazareth. In verse 1, God's word says this: he went away from there. Where? He had been on a mission trip of sorts. He went away from there and came to his hometown, and his disciples with him. You see, the story sets up that after all the craziness Jesus has been through, you remember, right? Jesus went and they were in the storm that threatened to tear the boat apart, and Jesus said, "Peace, be still." They almost died in a storm, or Well, Jesus didn't think they were ever really at risk of dying, apparently. After that, they get to this terribly scary incident in the Gerasene region where there's that demoniac, the one that was cutting himself, and there was the incident with the pigs. Quite the eventful road trip Jesus and his disciples have been on. When they get back into Jewish territory, you know what happens? Well, there's a sick kid. Jesus is en route to go and see him when, of course, this crowd is around him in such capacity that one bleeding woman touches Jesus, that he heals her. That's how busy things have been. Jesus then heals the dead child. And after all of this madness, he comes home to his home congregation. After all of the craziness that has been going on, the story sets up for a warm return, doesn't it? But you know the story, don't you? It doesn't quite go that way. You see, Jesus, since he left home, a lot has happened, hasn't it? Jesus, of course, has been preaching the gospel. He's become quite the preacher since he went away from home and seemed to leave his carpentry apprenticeship or carpentry profession, following the footsteps of his father. He then demonstrates power over chaos, over creation, over disease, demons, even death. And then he gets a reality check when he goes home. That's where it starts, isn't it? You see, the story starts with a light-hearted, heartwarming tone, and then it expectedly swerves in a negative direction. You know why? That's when he went to church. Continue reading Mark chapter 6 and verse 2. On the Sabbath, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were astonished, saying, "Where did this man get these things? What is the wisdom given to him? How are such mighty works done by his hands? Is not this the carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James and Joseph and Judas and Simon? Are not his sisters here with us?" And they took offense at him. You see, Jesus, when he makes his homecoming, and this is, as far as I understand, a reconstruction of what would have been the synagogue back in the first century in Nazareth. It's a place that you can go and visit today. There's a small church that meets there to this day, and the building that was once the synagogue in Nazareth. Can you picture Jesus sitting here, Jesus then getting up to preach for his home congregation? Can you imagine the murmuring in the pews when he says something that they didn't expect? What kind of things do you think that they were saying to one another? Well, this kid grew up right here in Nazareth under our very noses. I don't guess we should give them a southern accent, should we? In a family we all knew. Well, look over there. It says his siblings. They're just normal. And in fact, they're named here, James. And now, of course, they don't know that some of these would go on to write New Testament epistles. They just seem to be normal people in the eyes of the Nazarites. What kind of things do you think they were saying? Who does he think he is? He's too big for his britches. Or it's just all a little hard to believe. Somebody said he even healed a demon-possessed man. I don't know about that. I've heard that one a time or two when I've said something ridiculous from the pulpit. How much more so with Jesus? Well, Jesus, when he comes home to his home congregation, instead of being met with a warm welcome, he's met with suspicion, isn't he? Rather than taking pride in their hometown Messiah, the Bible tells us that they took offense. In Mark, opposition to Jesus is building at this stage in the gospel from every direction. If you're looking around, you'll notice it. In fact, we've got direction from the inside and the outside. From the inside, of course, we've got religious leaders. From the outside, satanic spirits. But what's especially heartbreaking now is this, that hostility comes from his own kinfolk. Here, Jesus' own townspeople reject him not in spite of the wonders that he performed, but in fact, it's precisely because of them. Isn't it a shame? He surprised people with what's transpired since his ministry began. You know, the paralytic coming in from the hole in the roof. What kind of stories do you think Jesus told? Yeah, I was preaching in Peter's mother-in-law's house, and then what do you know? A guy came up from the ceiling. the demons in Decapolis, the desperate woman on the road to Jairus' house, and here he finds disbelief lurking in his own hometown. You'll notice, won't you, the pattern that's developing here, right? Remember the demon-possessed man from Mark chapter 5? The pattern here that's developing is this, that when he returned to his town, the demon-possessed man, in his right mind, people were curious. They were asking questions. For many, that curiosity then turned to suspicion and eventually fear, culminating in hostility. You see, brothers and sisters, if you experience a life-changing transformation in Jesus, and some of you have been here, haven't you? If you experience a life-changing transformation in Jesus, chances are those closest to you are going to be the ones that treat you with the most suspicion, aren't they? You'll say, I've changed. I met Jesus. I was baptized. I've been raised in newness of life with Jesus Christ. What are they going to say? Yeah, right. Or I'll believe it when I see it. Or, or sure. Sure you have. You see, chances are those closest to you will be suspicious. If God enacts an out-of-this-world change in your life, it will draw criticism. People will talk about you behind your back. The people that you might expect to congratulate you, in fact, even maybe the people that congratulate you to your face, are the ones that then will whisper behind your back, won't they? You won't always know it, but maybe you'll suspect it. Perhaps those that you would want to celebrate you, will they chastise you? You're disappointed. When that happens, hey, I've got good news for you. Congratulations, you're in good company. So it was with Jesus. He had come a long way from just being the carpenter's son, hadn't he? You see, what was at first mild suspicion now turns from suspicion to outright rejection. Let's continue reading. Mark chapter 6, verses 4 through 6. The text continues, and Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his hometown and among his relatives and in his own household. And he could do no mighty work there except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them. And he marveled because of their unbelief. And so he went about the villages teaching. I love that little footnote from Mark. He could do mighty work except for the fact that he's Jesus, and he still did some anyway, even though they didn't deserve it. That's what you get. I'll still heal you because I love you. I love these little editorial comments from Mark. You see, what was at first mild suspicion seems to escalate quickly into outright rejection. Jesus, of course, uses a proverbial statement that's similar to what was probably floating around as a colloquial phrase in their culture. There's a phrase from Plutarch, a little wisdom saying, a little proverb in the Greco-Roman world that says this: you would find that the most sensible and wisest people are little cared for in their own hometowns. Perhaps Plutarch himself, having gained some notoriety, had received some rejection along the way. So Jesus says a prophet is not without honor except in his own hometown, in his own household, among his own relatives. Seems to be drawing upon a well-known idea within their culture. But you know what happens is Jesus frequently identifies, in the midst of his rejection, with the prophets, especially when it comes to rejection. I love the statement from Matthew chapter 5, verses 11 and 12, kind of the end of the Beatitudes right there in the prologue of the Sermon on the Mount. You know, it's the blessed are you, blessed are these, blessed are those. And finally, he gets to the end to say, blessed are you when others revile you, persecute you, and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, he says. Why? For your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Jesus, when he encounters opposition, you know what he does? He understands that he stands in a great cloud of witnesses. You see, rejection can be isolating. It can make you feel like you don't belong. And yet Jesus shows us what we have to do is this: to remember who has walked this walk before us. If If you encounter rejection, remember you're in good company. Why do we often act like we're the only ones going through a hard time when we are? Why are we the kind of people that act like we're the only ones that experience difficulty or rejection when we do? It might be, of course, that when adversity strikes, it can feel so incredibly isolating. And yet, let's remember that Jesus knows the story. He identifies with Elijah, with Isaiah, with Jeremiah, and so should we. In fact, verse 4 even hints that his family members weren't always supportive, right? He says a prophet is not without honor in his own hometown, and then he goes on to say, and among his relatives and in his own household. Now, it seems like surely his family would be supportive, right? Well, that doesn't seem to be what happened. In fact, John chapter 7 and verse 5 gives us this little clue that even his own relatives were against him at this point in his ministry. They didn't even believe in him. I can't imagine it's easy being the little half-brother of Jesus, is it? Can't you just be more like your brother? And so they scoff at him. I wonder, have you ever been rejected? What kind of rejection are we talking about? Well, it might be relational rejection, a relationship turned sour. It might be that we're not harboring bitterness for being turned down for a job. I know people who have been eaten alive and lived in regret every day of their life after that one thing happened. God forbid that's any of us this morning. It might be that we're talking about being ridiculed or scoffed at for your commitment to Christ, making your allegiance known among your coworkers, or decidedly choosing to do things his way, even if it puts you out on the edges as a pariah. But it might be helpful to think of rejection as we receive simply kind of being the opposite of acceptance. Perhaps you don't identify with being outright door slammed in your face, rejected this morning. Maybe it's better if we conceive of it as the opposite of acceptance. You see, acceptance has become this buzzword in our society that we're so tolerant and you ought to accept everybody. Of course, for all of the virtue signaling that we have regarding acceptance in our society, we've really become quite an unaccepting bunch, haven't we? Quite unaccepting of people who might have a commitment to Christ. For all of our culture's posturing, each and every one of us in some ways has felt some lack of acceptance for your Christian values by the culture at large. Well, the good news this morning is this: Jesus was no stranger to rejection. Did you know that even some of the greats have experienced rejection? Talking about Kurt Warner, Walt Disney, even Albert Einstein experienced significant rejection along the way in their careers. Of course, Walt Disney was fired from one of his first animation jobs at the Kansas City Star in 1919. You know what they told him? He lacked imagination and good ideas. Yeah, good luck buying a ticket to Disney World. There was, of course, the reason that got him fired by his editor, Kurt Warner, the Super Bowl winning quarterback. Although I should note that he did lose the Super Bowl in 2009 to the Pittsburgh Steelers, but he did win one against somebody else. Well, he was cut from his college team. Northern Iowa, he was dismissed and told he wasn't good enough. Eventually had a great college career. Then it unraveled in the NFL. He was cut from the Packers training camp. Got a job working the night shift as a stock boy before eventually making his way back up through the Arena League and then to the NFL. And Albert Einstein, thirdly, took 4 years to start talking as a child. Probably he took time for meditating on something bigger later on, I would say. He couldn't read until he was 7. He appeared to be mentally handicapped, people say. And if he had never persisted, he would never have been good enough to, of course, go on to win the Nobel Prize. How much rejection do you think he received along the way for being thought of as mentally handicapped? You see, brothers and sisters, even the greats faced rejection and persevered. You see, while the Nazarites met Jesus with rejection, he had something of his own to leave behind in his hometown, and that was disappointment. Disappointment, finally, is what we find in Nazareth this morning. You see, in verse 2, it tells us that they, the people, the Nazarites, were astonished. But then if you keep reading, in verse 6, it tells us that now Jesus is doing the marveling. He was amazed. He was surprised. He was, of course, astonished, marveled by their unbelief. At first, they're surprised, and now Jesus is. And the word that's used for taking offense at him, this word that's used, they took offense at him. Let's see what verse this is here. The end of verse 3. Well, the word there, the Greek word, the root, is the same word that we get the word scandal, scandalized. In other words, this is quite the scandal in the synagogue this morning. Jesus is causing an uproar. He's making a scene. He's causing a stir. In the midst of this scandal, what's the most scandalous is the fact that folks wouldn't believe in Jesus. You see, Mark isn't describing the climax of the movie Elf, right? You love the Christmas movie with Will Ferrell. At the end of the movie, you just need a lot of people to believe in order for Santa's sleigh to fly, right? Great movie, terrible ending. Well, that's not what's happening here. You see, rather, it's not that he needs a lot of belief in order to make his power work. Rather, think of it this way, that he cannot give them what they do not want to receive. Are you with me? They're hostile rather than hospitable. And so if Jesus visited us this morning, let me ask you this. What would he find here? Would he be amazed? And for what reason? You see, brothers and sisters, people will disappoint you, especially those you're closest to. People you should be able to depend on. People in your hometown. God forbid, it even happens in your home church. Maybe even your family. Jesus was no stranger to this. Remember, the next time that you're feeling disappointed by those you love, you're in good company. People disappoint you, even those closest to you, but you're in good company because so was Jesus. Jesus didn't let rejection define him. He didn't let disappointment distract him. He didn't let betrayal embitter him. He didn't let it distract him from his identity, his purpose, or his mission. What about you this morning? Remember, brothers and sisters, if you follow Jesus, it means swimming upstream from the world. Opposition is unavoidable. So is suspicion. Hostility, sometimes. Dishonor, certainly. Rejection. Hey, maybe even betrayal. But let me encourage you in this. Brothers and sisters, keep swimming. Keep swimming upstream. You see, we even sing about this. We sang about it a moment ago, the song that I had asked Lee to lead, and I'm so grateful that he did. I've had it stuck in my head for 2 weeks because I was hoping to preach this last week. Highly exalted. Those words that we just sang, we affirmed them. You know what we did when we sang that song? We didn't remind God of what happened, did we? We were singing to one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs with that one. We were reminding one another as we sang this song that he was despised, he was rejected, he was passed by. But then did you notice the gospel flip that happened in that song? It's a gospel flip that we each and every one of us need to be reminded of this morning. It's this, that God exalted his name above all names. We've got a head start on that here this morning, don't we? We're honoring him as the one before whom every knee shall bow on heaven and on earth and under the earth. You see, Jesus knows a thing or two about rejection. Will we follow him? What would Jesus find among us this morning? Let me encourage you in this regard. Let us not be found by those who love us, those who know us, visitors that might come to Southside, family members that might come and sit next to us for a Sunday. I don't know about you, but I want to be known not as a certain so-and-so kind of church. You know what I mean? This is how we talk about churches. Well, they're a progressive church, or they're a conservative church, or they're a traditional church, or a Bible-based church, or they're really active, or they've got a great children's ministry kind of church. Brothers and sisters, let us not be found as flashy or old-fashioned, progressive or conservative, trendy or traditional, but faithful. May Jesus find us simply as faithful. May we be reminded this week of the power of God at work in our lives. May we be open and receptive to God's work in our lives. May we demonstrate a need for Jesus. May we abide in him even if others forsake us, revile us, or frown upon us. Remember, when you do find rejection, and you will, remember, you walk with Jesus because he's been there first. And he includes you in the family of faith. The good news about the rejection sermon from Mark chapter 6 this morning is Jesus did not quit and give up and hang up his ministry robes there in his closet in Nazareth. No, instead he continues to preach and to teach and to heal. And you know where that road would lead him? To more rejection, that's right. To being hung and murdered as a criminal on the cross. As Kennedy reminded us from Isaiah 53 this morning, he took that penalty for us. He suffered the ultimate rejection so that we might be included in the household of God forever and ever. Isn't that good news this morning? You see, the scene foreshadows what would be the eventual outcome of all this opposition. Jesus would not only be rejected, but ridiculed. Not just cast out from his hometown, but crucified in the city of the King. And he will go to the farthest reaches of rejection so that you and I might be reconciled to God this morning. Are you reconciled to God? The good news is Christ accepts us into the family of faith. But first you have to receive him. We're taught what that receiving him looks like. Of course, we know that means confessing him as Lord, repenting of sin, then being buried with him in baptism, united with him in his death, and raised in newness of life. If this morning you need to receive Jesus in that way, or perhaps if you've been discouraged, folks have let you down, you need to pray for a repentant heart, you need to extend forgiveness to someone, or perhaps you need to renew your commitment to Christ, well, hey, there's no better place than home. Would you come now and let us receive you as we stand and sing?